Hi, everyone. This is Lauren Baker, founder of Search Engine Journal. Welcome to today's SEJ webinar. With me today, we have a full house, the team from ImageX. I have Richard, Bjorn, and John. I'll give you three a chance to introduce yourselves real quickly, and then I'll do some housekeeping before the presentation component of the webinar begins.
Sounds good. Thanks, Lauren. I'll kick things off. My name is Richard Nozick. I'm the manager of SEO and digital strategy at ImageX. And here I support our clients and all of that stuff that might fall under the digital marketing umbrella, broadly speaking. Next, I'll hand it over to Bjorn.
Hello, so my name is Bjorn Thompson. I'm the director of Digital Experience Solutions. And my role at ImageX is to help clients understand business goals, user goals, technical goals, and develop a solution around that. John.
Hi, John Tran. I'm a CTO at ImageX. Been with ImageX about 8 years and with about 25 years in industry experience. So great to talk to you today.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone. Like I said, it's a full house, so I'm not going to spend too much time doing the housekeeping because just to let everyone know the format of today's webinar, typically we'll have about 40 to 45 minutes of presentation and then live Q&A at the end. As you're viewing the presentation today, the Drupal AI audit, how CMOs can assess whether their stack is built for what's coming and what's on the horizon. As you're watching today, please feel free to both participate in the chat channel. We like to ask everyone to just kind of chime in and let us know where you're coming in from. And then also, as you have questions about the presentation, feel free to ask them in the Q&A box. We'll be sifting through those questions and then asking Richard, Bjorn, and John afterwards to enlighten everyone on what more you'd like to learn there. We'll be also launching a poll during the webinar today. We ask everyone to participate in this poll. It helps our presenters know more about you and craft the presentation accordingly. In terms of questions, the main question we always get is, will the slides and the video be made available? The answer is yes. The slides and the video will be made available to all registrants and attendees. So that's going to answer most of the questions that come in during this first minute or so. And we will have a handout takeaway that we'll be pinning during the webinar that you can use to download and find out more information on ImageX and this presentation as a whole. On that note, I'm going to hand things over to the ImageX team.
All right. Thank you very much, Lauren. And thank you, everyone, for your time and your attention today. It's greatly appreciated as we share today about sort of an AI audit for this evolving search landscape that we find ourselves in. I think many of us are experiencing a little bit of anxiety about AI, maybe how it's going to impact our business, how it's going to impact our marketing, and even things like how it's going to impact assets like our website. So the prospects and the clients that I talk to, there certainly does feel like there's a little bit of scrambling to incorporate AI into their strategies overall. And when we talk about this topic of AI readiness, we certainly know that there is a behavioral shift, especially when we're talking about how people are using search. A recent study by Pew that was done in July of 2025 looked at browsing data and browsing behavior. And one of the things that was standing out to me was that when there was an AI summary present in the search results, the clicks on the traditional SEO were only about 8% compared to 15% when there was no AI summary present. So while we know that generative search is changing the discovery behavior, I mean, I see it with my clients and it makes me nervous a little bit myself, and my clients are nervous. But there is something that is interesting. We're still seeing traditional SEO is driving really measurable results. And to maybe help confirm this for me a little bit, recently, Nielsen Norman published an article in a study that they did, and their behavioral shift could be summarized like this if you go to the article. Users are choosing AI to explore and synthesize information, but I like this part, they're relying on traditional search when accuracy and trust are critical. So we're a team of problem solvers, and we're helping our clients go through this sort of apprehensive, uncertain, scary kind of time in some regards. What we're doing is we're helping them to shift the way that they're thinking about their digital experience. So the old way, it was a set of pages. Now we're shifting the mindset more toward a modular thinking kind of a mindset, which is going to help to meet the demands of AI and omni-channel delivery. So to get right into it then, today we're going to look at this actually through three lenses. We're going to assess whether or not your tech stack is ready by looking at it through the digital lens. And I'm going to talk about that, discoverability, content strategy, conversion optimization. Then we're going to shift over to Bjorn. Bjorn's going to talk about it through the business lens. And then we'll conclude the webinar today by having John talk about this through the technical lens. So I'm going to talk about visibility and conversion. One of the things that I wanted to say, just to help set the stage a little bit, is I think it's important to distinguish whether AI is being used like a research assistant or an answer engine. And I'm going to assume if this was in a room, I could put show your hands. If you're using AI, we'd probably all lift up our hands. But I think it's important to distinguish that AI is not rewarding content. It's not like we did optimize for in SEO of the old days, where a traditional search engine has an algorithm, we optimize our site, and then the search engine rewards our content with rankings. And our goal then was, rank number one. We want to get the click. With the AI shift, we still want visibility. We want to be found. And I think that still feels like a reward, but the underlying mechanism of AI readiness is technical and it's probabilistic. So AI optimization is about becoming the most citation ready source. And in theory, you could actually rank quite low in traditional SEO sense, but still be the primary cited source in AI if the page is the easiest one for AI to ground its answers in. So the goal, it's shifted a little bit. It's visibility, but not, what rank are we? What spot did we rank in? It's more about, is our website the cited source that AI builds its answer from? So content teams, they still have to publish content. We still have to produce content that's clearly written, that answers real questions, that is useful for our audience. But how the tech stack and how your CMS are configured can have a direct impact on that AI readiness. And we're going to hear more from John about that in a little bit. So thinking about your brand and thinking about visibility, I think brand visibility has always been omni-channel to some degree. But now we're just adding another channel, and that's AI. And this new visibility is showing up in terms of what we call citations. And I'll talk more about citation readiness in a specific slide coming up, but think of it in the context of this topic, think of citations as the digital equivalent of a source credit within a generative AI response. We know that studies are showing a consistent pattern, and the research that's being shared when we're using AI, and I know we're all doing it, so I think we can relate to this, our online discovery is much different than it used to be with the traditional search engines. We know that clicks are down if there's an AI summary present. And in fact, even this broader shift to online discovery, a SEER interactive study showed that CTR or click-through rates are declining even if there isn't an AI overview. So visibility is becoming a separate and distinct KPI of its own, where maybe we didn't have that before. And it's going to become more, in my opinion, it's going to become more of a metric that we look at than we look at traffic. Citations and mentions inside AI answers and inside search engine results, features, I think that's the next battleground that digital and content marketers are going to have to focus on. And while AI is changing a lot of things and shifting a lot of the approaches we would have taken, I don't know that it's necessarily a new funnel, but I think it's a compressed funnel. Because when users engage with assistants like ChatGPT, Perplexity, or even if they're using Google AI mode, I know from my own experience, what I'm doing is I'm getting a synthesized answer, I'm learning a lot, and then when I go to a website, I'm already much further down the funnel. And I'm aware of the brand, your prospects are already going to likely even had comparisons of your brand in the AI results. So now they're actively looking for solutions. When they arrive at your site, your website is becoming a really essential proof layer. It's like the moment of truth where these pre-qualified visitors are now qualifying you. So you need to be able to build trust, offer them some depth, give them verifiable claims, real data, be transparent about your authorship, because they're using your website to validate the choice that they made. So I think it's time that marketing teams and CMOs start to think about focusing on the high intent journeys. It's reasonable to expect fewer total sessions, but I think what we'll have is a higher quality session. And so what I'm seeing in data is that, if you're still measuring bounce rate, we're going to see lower bounce rates from these users. You could expect an increased time on the site, significantly stronger conversion rates. My story is that when I'm looking at dozens and dozens and dozens of clients' Google Analytics data, I see traffic and users. They're behaving a lot like organic search traffic and users. They're just much more engaged. And I think the implication maybe for the CMO is that our strategies need to stop optimizing for volume and really engineer intent path. So think about comparing programs, pricing validation, your decision stage content, and then making sure that your content, it establishes instant credibility and has a zero friction to conversions. We'll talk a little bit about that in another slide, but I think the shift that I believe is happening is now that your site really owns this make it or break it validation step. Before AI, your site played a really critical part in all stages of the funnel. People would visit your site multiple times during the journey in that funnel. After AI, or now where we're currently at, AI is playing a much, much more critical role in awareness and consideration. When we audit large Drupal sites, I know Bjorn could speak to this, having done many, many projects in the past, but one of the big opportunities that we see is that we can turn top content pages into dynamic, structured validation experiences. And when we take a look at a Drupal site or a CMS setup, what we end up seeing sometimes is that those top content pages that are really valuable, they're kind of an unstructured body field. They're like this blob of content. And that's actually detrimental. It's detrimental to the AI because it can't reliably pull facts from that content. And we know that even the user experience is compromised a little bit when they are seeing these sort of big blocks of text on a page. Thinking into the future and where this is all going to go, it's still the early stages, right? We're still moving from experimentation into implementation. We're still learning a lot, but I think that the primary unit of SEO is not going to be the keyword any longer. It's going to be the entity. And the entity, you can define that as anything that's important on your site. So it could be a program, it could be a service, it could be a team bio. And our shift is going to be to entity clarity. So making it crystal clear to the machines exactly what that element of content on your page is about, its attributes, and how it relates to everything else on your website. And I think CMOs should be asking this kind of question of their team. They should ask, is our brand a clearly defined, well-connected entity that AI trusts and can easily explain to users? As I was doing this, I was thinking about my career, which is now just over a couple of decades long. And I was thinking of SEOs who have been doing this for a long time. And maybe they're seeing and hearing what I'm seeing and hearing, which is, whenever I see content about SEO for AI, it kind of feels like it's an echo from the past. But really, it's a shift from this traditional sense of keywords and string matching to building semantic authority that AI models can easily understand and cite, which is meaning matching. And I think back to semantic SEO in maybe like 2013 or something. So now think about each of pieces of your content as an entity and then start to group those together in clusters. And when we are connecting these pages or entities together, and I started thinking and seeing these words of entity cluster, that flashed me back also to another SEO tactic from the old days, which would have been that cluster content. But essentially, clusters are connecting entities And this is the important part to get across to the marketers here. This is covering the full, what you want to do is cover the full buyer journey that somebody is actually taking when they're making a decision. And we need to focus on that whole set of questions that somebody would be asking an AI chat agent, not just the keywords. Yes, the keywords are going to be in those questions, but now start thinking about that whole set of questions. And when we start to look under the hood of Drupal, of a Drupal website, this is something that we see with large-scale Drupal implementations quite often. We see fragmented content types, we see inconsistent taxonomy, and quite often we see weak or even broken internal linking structures. What happens is that this turns the entire website into a confusing mess for Google, as well as generative AI. And I think a practical question that every marketer in this room could take and walk away from is ask, can an AI engine look at our website and instantly understand who we are, what we offer, and why we're the best choice? Or would it have to make guesses and assumptions or look for that information somewhere else? So I've talked a little bit about the changes that we're seeing in digital marketing and some key differences between Google and the current online discovery behavior. A couple slides back, I mentioned citations and citation readiness. I defined citation as a digital equivalent of a source credit within a generative AI response. And so for the next couple slides, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how you can optimize your content so that it's citation ready and conversion ready. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was citations, because I think this is where, like I was saying before, the battlefield kind of is for us. Establish obvious authorship and credibility. I think this is really important. I see this with a lot of client websites. They're producing content. They don't have authors clearly displayed. So display your author bios, any of their credentials. So if they've got peer-reviewed work, or connect them to their other authoritative sources, such as their LinkedIn profiles, or if they have a professional profile on a related association website. And by doing this, you can send a strong signal to the AI that your content is trustworthy and it's safe to cite. The next thing is to think about your content and optimize for extractable content. This is one of the things I've been learning as I've been going down the AI journey, is that AI models function best when they can easily parse relationships between questions and answers. Large language models, or LLMs, they don't actually know things, right? They're calculating probabilistic relationships between pieces of information. So using scannable structures on your pages, things like H1s, H2s, H3s, putting important information into bullet lists, having concise summary paragraphs, this can all help to reduce the noise that the AI has to filter through. And as I was, prepping for this, I thought to myself, this again is another one that sounds like an echo from SEO, and even writing for the web best practices from like 10 plus years ago. When your content is technically easy to crawl and it's logically organized, you increase the likelihood of being cited in an AI generative response or an AI overview. And then the last little nugget as a takeaway for citation readiness, your content must provide like linkable nuggets. So information in the elements, things like formal descriptions, specific benchmarks, if you have those, verified claims. You could use elements like FAQs or how-tos, any kind of related content like that that could provide AI with that ready-made nugget that is a perfect kind of to fit into a conversational response. And as I'm getting close to wrapping up my section of this presentation, I just wanted to finish off by talking about conversion optimization. We know from our own experiences, I think all of us can identify with how AI compresses research phases. So potential clients are performing their sort of top of funnel research. They're using an AI chat interface and they're coming to your website. They're much further along the buyer journey and they're arriving in a much more decision ready kind of state. So we have to adapt our conversion strategy. And we need to think about providing clear pathways for both the immediate kind of actions that people will take, and those higher value requesting a demo or signing up for a free trial. And then we want to build relationship building actions, maybe the micro conversions like content downloads, and video engagements, but combining those in a bit of a mix where you have some high commitment with some lower barrier conversions. So it's, you know, a world where we live in today that people are arriving at your site and they're AI informed, and it seems like maybe they will have lower tolerance for ambiguity. So we got to prioritize clarity, and we got to make sure that we're very explicit in the requirements, that we're sending trust signals. Any of these kind of friction points, such as hidden pricing or complex steps, or that lack of social proof, that can cause them just to bounce back to AI for a better alternative, similar to how things would have been in the old days of Google search, where people just bounce back and look for another search result. And just before I wrap up my section of the webinar, we'd like to share a little marketer-friendly AI audit scorecard, and you can get that in the handout, or it might pop up here. But this is intended to give you the necessary means to evaluate any CMS, not necessarily just Drupal, from the marketing team's perspective. And it categorizes the consideration to think about is discoverability. So how effectively can AI agents find and map your entire knowledge base? Like, will AI crawlers miss a connection between high value pages? Think about your content model. So do you have reusable components, or do you have content that's trapped in a single page? And are your high value content pages tagged with the intent and the audience and the status, and making it, you know, repurposable by AI chatbots? And then finally, evaluate your conversion and your measurement. I'd love to know, I didn't put this in as a poll, but in a real audience room, I'd have you raise your hands. How many of you are actually tracking the AI journey? Do you have events and funnels and attribution capturing that will give you data about your AI users and your AI traffic? Can you measure how that AI-driven traffic is interacting with your micro and your macro kind of conversion points? But yeah, take a look at that download. I'd really appreciate that. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. Next, I'm going to pass it over to Bjorn for his part of our story.
Excellent. Thanks, Richard. I just wanted to start by asking, can you hear me? That's the first step.
Roger.
Great. Awesome. That was the first hurdle. So in the last section, Richard talked about the traditional ways of looking at visibility and how that's obviously changing a lot. And like any change, that creates a lot of uncertainty, and Richard kind of talked about that as well. And we're hearing that a lot from our own clients. Just last week, we met with a client who said, you know, do we even need a website 5 years from now? How do we navigate that? What should we do? What shouldn't we do? And what's the kind of path forward in the face of all this change? So in this section, we'll talk about a response that draws from our own experience in the agency world with what we've seen move the needle, how we can move from visibility to outcomes, and how we can improve that performance over time. So to do that, we'll shift from just showing up in AI, which is always nice, but doesn't necessarily lead to outcomes, to how AI can help with actual growth, whatever that might mean to you. So the approach that we're suggesting is based on familiar best practices. So we're not reinventing the wheel of measurement, but we're thinking about AI when we're thinking about all these things. So our perspective is that the fundamentals, kind of like what Richard said, the fundamentals haven't really changed, but AI will and it can influence how we approach traditional models and what we pay attention to. So in this slide here, we're just going to talk about 3 layers of growth that all kind of operate in harmony with each other. So to move from, you know, just showing up to actually driving results, we need all 3 of those working together. The first layer is measurement and learning. So in other words, are we actually producing results? Are we seeing meaningful improvement? The second is governance. Who owns a CMS? Who makes sure that the content is accurate and well structured? And who makes sure, of course, that it's improving, the most important part. And then finally, the third is execution. How do improvements actually get planned? How do they get implemented? What's the sort of mechanism by which you make meaningful and measurable improvements in the site? So the key overall is that growth happens when all of these measurement, governance, and execution are operating together as a full system, not as kind of independent silos. So the first layer we're looking at is measurement and learning. So I think we all know in the AI world, the number of sessions isn't necessarily a reliable signal by itself anymore. A lot of the queries that used to reach websites, we know from our own experience using the web now, those queries are being absorbed by AI summaries or search results. And the visitors who arrive, as Richard said multiple times, they're often more qualified, they're closer to taking action, which can be good news. So we need to measure the performance, not just on the site or from campaigns, but across the whole journey. So measuring that path from an AI answer to the user's final action. To do that, we'll use a classic, very familiar 4-step measure and improve cycle, but through the lens of AI, looking for signals that show growing intent. The first level in the flow is discoverability. Do we actually show up when AI systems generate answers versus our competitors or versus other potential authority sources? Are we perceived to have that topic authority? The second is engagement. When visitors do arrive, do they actually explore? Do they go deeper? If they move further into that related content, that's a signal that the site's supporting that journey. The third is conversion. Do they take meaningful steps like subscribing or applying? That could be a primary action, as Richard mentioned, like purchasing, or a micro conversion, like requesting information, or kind of a soft conversion. And then finally, insights and improvement. Can we turn that performance data into decisions about what to improve next? The second layer is governance. So we can measure and measure and measure, but that by itself doesn't drive improvement. Someone has to own the system. Someone has to make sure that those improvements are being distributed and they're being managed and planned over time. So we break that governance into 3 core areas. The first is ownership. So who maintains the structure of the CMS? Who maintains those things like Richard mentioned, the content models, taxonomy, structured data, editorial workflows? Who maintains the system? Who makes sure that content stays accurate? Who makes sure that high-value pages are always up to date, whether that's pricing, policies, deadlines, whatever that might be. And then finally, improvement. Who drives continuous improvement? Who schedules it? Who makes sure that insights are moved into a backlog? Who prioritizes that backlog? And who makes sure that content gets reviewed and pruned? And what we see is the teams that successfully execute on this treat their CMS not like a publishing tool, but like a product. They're following that sort of steady ongoing loop of publish, measure, improve, and they're iteratively doing that over time, which kind of leads to the last point, which is execution. So once we have a clear and usable measurement system and governance structure in place, the next step is actually doing something and executing. And in our experience, we tend to see kind of 2 different types of work, both of which work in harmony together to create lasting value. Kind of can't have one without the other. It's like Reese's Pieces. So the first is quick wins in optimization. Those are improvements that increase the performance of what exists already. We're not creating necessarily anything new structurally. So that could be metadata improvements, internal links, template adjustments, or small UX fixes or page fixes, things like that. So those can deliver results quickly, so you see the results right away, which can be motivating as well, and that can build momentum for larger changes. Then the second type of implementation or change is capacity building. That's work that makes the underlying system better, so the organization can keep improving over time. So it kind of gives you the right cleats so you can play soccer, and kind of gives you all the things you need to do to kind of execute properly. So that's very important. So as Richard mentioned in a previous slide, AI favors well-structured, extractable content. It wants it in a certain form. So when we restructure content models, when we're improving integrations, when we're improving performance, and fixing kind of structural issues in the CMS, whether they're issues with readability or just us getting our work done, that helps not necessarily produce immediate gains, but it makes that long-term growth possible, kind of empowers the system. So a roadmap for growth includes both of those. Optimization creates momentum, capacity building makes sure that the system keeps getting better. And then just as kind of a wrap up of these ideas, the core approach is simple. When organizations aren't measuring the right things, assigning clear ownership and prioritizing improvements, like I said, the CMS can become like a content dump or just a publishing tool. Instead, what we're aiming to do is make a repeatable system for ongoing growth and better outcomes. And John will talk next a bit about how Drupal specifically, as a CMS, can help you execute on that system, create a product for ongoing growth, and something that can actually help with all 3 of these areas.
You're muted, John. Today was our challenge for audio. Just so everyone's aware, we were having pre-show challenges with Bjorn's audio. We can't hear you yet.
It says the mic is on. Would you guys like for me to run the poll?
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, we could run the poll while John maybe just leaves and rejoins.
There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and start today's poll. How would you measure your organization's level of AI maturity? We have 4 answers. A, what does AI stand for? B, currently just exploring. C, experimenting with AI in some areas. And then D, AI is core to our strategy and we have multiple use cases in production. So we'll be letting the answers come in. I see they're starting to flow in already. There's usually a little bit of a delay on our side, so please go ahead and vote.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes,
There we go.
you're in. So I'm going to go ahead and share these poll answers, John, and then we'll be ready for you. Okay.
Awesome. So while you guys are filling that out, we'll just talk a bit through some historical context about the state of AI in the Drupal ecosystem. So about a year ago, our CEO, Glenn Hilton, and I traveled to Europe for a Drupal conference. And at that conference, sort of an impromptu AI summit formed involving some key players in the Drupal space, including Dries, the founder himself. And to make a long story short, that ended up launching the Drupal AI initiative, which you may or may not have heard of. But basically, ImageX, together with 25 other industry leading companies, agencies, technology companies like Acquia and Amazy, banded together and essentially committed to driving AI adoption within the Drupal ecosystem. So sort of fast forward a year later, and just last week, actually, version 1.3 of the Drupal AI initiative just launched. There was a 1.1 and 1.2 release throughout the year, but 1.3 is quite mature. And there's also an entire 2026 roadmap that was published about a month ago by Dries, and that will be included as a takeaway from this webinar for you to dive in a little deeper. There's also a website where there's quite a bit of information available on the Drupal AI initiative. But in essence, the Drupal AI initiative focuses on automating tasks, extending content and marketing workflows with AI for content authors. So specifically, we can organize these features into kind of 3 categories: content creation or generation. So creating content with AI within Drupal, tools that you're already used to using, like CK Editor, content types, layout builder. So, you may be doing this today kind of manually, cutting and pasting from LLMs or translations and stuff like that. But these tools help you work with AI directly within the Drupal authoring experience. The second category is governance. So as Bjorn was saying, now these tools are allow for automated audits, workflows for things like approval, translation, maintaining brand consistency across content. So there's quite a few tools for that. And then there's also campaign automation tools integrated. So you can utilize the content creation across multiple channels and the governance tools to automate campaign creation and management. For basic orchestration, there's an event condition action, so ECA rule sets available that you can use to create customized content, personalized content. And there's also model context protocol or MCP integrations to third-party tools like Marketo or HubSpot that you may already be using, so that you can pull in data from there as well for your campaign orchestration. At ImageX, beyond the Drupal AI work that we're involved with, we're heavily focused on extending Drupal AI beyond the core feature set to provide value to end users. So what that means is our focus is on bringing AI to your consumers, not just the authoring experience. So that breaks down into kind of 3 categories as well: internal development optimization tools based on AI. So that's development tools that mostly my team uses internally to implement some of these other client-facing initiatives. And then the 2 primary areas we're focused on are semantic search implementation, which is kind of the next generation of search technology for Drupal sites, and then an agentic digital advisor that guides users through a content consumption experience. And we call that the content concierge. So if we dive into those a little bit deeper, semantic search is basically the natural evolution in search, incorporating AI. So instead of relying on keyword matches and explicit basic deterministic logic, it understands the intent, the context, and the meaning of the search query and the content coming back. So you can kind of think of it like Perplexity layered on top of Drupal as your default search experience. We're working on rolling that out right now for several customers. And then the other big piece is the content concierge, and that's basically our interpretation of the next generation of digital experience. So it's a series of Drupal-based UI components and agentic tools that connects to Drupal agents and as well as third-party open source agents that then can be combined into any number of use cases. So for example, a university admissions advisor, or a car shopping assistant, or a digital museum guide. So these agentic tools can really extend your end user's experience with your content. So like I said, we're rolling that semantic search out right now, and we're actually debuting the content concierge with the major university client of ours at DrupalCon next week. So we built out a digital admissions advisor. So hopefully we'll see some of you there. We can demo it to you at our booth in person, or we could also share the speaking the video with you on the webinar as well once that's released from DrupalCon. So next we can look at the poll results here. Oh, I see those.
Absolutely. I'll go ahead and get those up right now.
Oh, I see them.
Here are the results.
Great. So actually quite a few are have already got quite far into your strategy. So that's pretty great. If you go back to the slide, Lauren, we've got this kind of basic implementation path here. So some of you are kind of along this path already, but for Drupal, we've kind of laid out the simple approach, and you can kind of do it linearly, or you can do it all at once, or even backwards, really, if you want to start with from the experience perspective. But essentially, the first step would be to implement the Drupal AI set of modules, and that will get you the initial content generation piece. And then once you have that in place, you can layer on the content governance and the automation piece for campaigns. And then ultimately, we think the natural progression from there is to customize the AI integrated user experiences. Search is a great place to start. If you haven't looked at how to implement semantic search on your as a replacement for keyword search, we highly recommend that. There's tools within the Drupal AI modules themselves. There's still some implementation work you can do. We have tools that can accelerate that, and then ultimately you can look at more customized experiences like content concierge type implementation with our tool set, or on your own. There's you could build those type of experiences on top of Drupal AI for sure, on using your own development initiatives. So great. I hope that gives you some idea of how to approach AI implementation within your organization, and look forward to answering any questions you have, or potentially seeing you at DrupalCon next week.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John. And that leaves us about 20 minutes for Q&A. So I'll go ahead and get started. The first question that comes in is, do you have a demo that you can share of the content concierge that you just mentioned?
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, we're debuting that next week at DrupalCon, and then we'll be releasing that presentation and also demonstrating it hands-on at the booth there. So if you're there, feel free to join us. We'd love to talk to you. Otherwise, we can send that out post-conference.
Excellent. Thank you. Next question that comes in is, There's so many options available that it can be overwhelming. What tools would you recommend to keep track of our AI search rankings?
Yeah, I can maybe take this one. And there are lots and lots of tools. We use SEMrush as an agency tool for our clients, and they have built-in AI visibility and AI ranking. But you could choose from a number of the top platforms, Moz, Ahref. They're all incorporating the AI visibility into their tools, and it's probably a good place to start. That would be my recommendation, just because there is so much out there. I think that everybody is now using AI, and they're spinning up apps and software to do all kinds of things. And then we see that released, and it's maybe not been validated or tested. And some of these other platforms have been around for years and years and years.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it's nice to have a kind of a source of truth, common denominator, where you can also look at your organic rankings as well. So that's great. Are there any specific metrics you think we should be using for tracking our AI search optimization?
Yeah, that's also that's a really good question. And I think that in one of the comments that came into the chat, the first place to start, in my opinion, is by setting up some tracking in Google Analytics. And there is, I'm going to give a little bit of a shout out if you give me 1 second to find the name. There's a website that I found about a year ago that the person had created the regular expression and set up the step-by-step so that using Google Tag Manager and using Google Analytics, you could now look at traffic that was coming from specific AI tools. And I think that's a great place to start. And somebody brought it up in the chat, like use regular expression, do a little bit of configuration in just using Google Tag Manager and using Google Analytics. Any competent digital marketer could follow the instructions of copying and pasting and setting that up, because then you can start to see user and acquisition reports that are looking specifically at that AI. And I think that's probably the best place to start, in my opinion. Yeah. And I don't know if anybody else would have any other thoughts or opinions on that. Okay.
Anything else? Okay, I'll move on to the next one. Thank you, Richard. What does a realistic roadmap look like for improving AI search readiness? And are there any quick wins?
Yeah, so some of the kind of key features of a roadmap are obviously time, priority, and the relative size or difficulty or effort involved in tasks. So it's often helpful. We've seen it's often helpful for clients when they're first starting is to break a roadmap into a bit of a time plan, like a 30-day plan, a 90-day plan, a quarterly plan. That does include quick wins as well as longer term initiatives. So within that, let's say 30-day or 90-day plan, you can identify top pages, top journeys, so the ones that matter most to your prospects or to your customers, whoever they might be, and start looking at those priority items, thinking about the kind of the things that Richard was talking about, the structure that an AI search would want. So when someone first comes to that page or section, answering their question right at the beginning, who is this for? What's the purpose of this product or service? What are the benefits of it? Structuring the main content with clear headings, clear kind of structure underneath, supported by metadata like cost, time, that sort of thing. And similarly, these are all kind of classic UX principles, but they also work in the AI world. Clear next steps. What can I do next? And then, of course, evidence and case studies. These are all things that marketers have been saying for a long time, but clearly these are the signals that AI is looking for. Is the page readable? Can I consume it and ingest it? Are there clear next steps? And is there evidence? So obviously that helps users too. So that roadmap, knocking off 2 or 3 or some portion of things that are important, things that you can be improved, can be a really great place to start. And then also, of course, making out like a quarterly roadmap of longer term improvements to content models, editor experience, and things like that. Anything that makes it easier to act on your ideas and strategy, and then aren't kind of leaving you kind of hanging when you want to make changes, but the CMS won't allow you to.
Yeah, maybe I can just tag on to that, Lauren, because I can think of the experience I'm having right now working with clients doing this exact same thing. So we know that structured data is going to help AI understand your page. And a lot of websites, I look at lots of higher ed and not-for-profit and commercial websites. And one of the first things I do is I will use Screaming Frog and I'll crawl to see if there's structured data being used. Or I'll take the homepage and I'll go over to Google's Rich Results Test or schema.org validator and just see, are they using structured data? And we're taking this strategy with clients now where if they don't have schema structure, let's get a basic implementation. Let's have institutional schema structure on the homepage or the About Us page. Let's get something there so that AIs will understand who you are and what you're about and why you might be the choice of a citation. And that's that early part of the roadmap that Bjorn was talking about. But the longer part is then starting to think about how can we advance basic schema and fundamental stuff really, and turn it into engineering of entities and building out knowledge graphs, and then starting to connect. If you were higher ed, you'd want to connect programs to classes to instructors and start building that relationship so that when AIs crawl and they land on one page, they can start to connect the dots. And that's a longer stretch for sure, because then that involves, well, maybe you've got to add content to a page or you've got to redesign a page a little bit. And then there'll be some development work. But this is one of the questions that came in about Drupal. Drupal's doing a really solid job at providing marketers and the people that manage the website with built-in modules to implement structured data. And that's been, I'm 10 years into Drupal now, but this is one of the things I loved about it is that module exists and it maps a lot of schema types. And so you can configure if you were creating, a simple example is the article page or a blog page. And your developer configures that content type. And then you have the page laid out with all of its fields, not just that big blob of text in the body field. And now your editors go in there and they add their blog article, and they don't even have to think about the metadata that's associated to titles and meta descriptions and schema, because it's tokenized, mapped, and it automatically happens. So before I go on too much more, I could blab away about this stuff all day long, but that's maybe answering and putting a practical, tactical step that could be implemented.
Well, I'm really glad you bring that up, especially kind of like your beginner's default schema package, right? And then the ability to build that out into a robust identity-driven, markup that almost defines anything. That kind of bridges into the next question, which I think is kind of interesting. What is the biggest misconception you see organizations make when they say that their CMS is AI ready?
Yeah, from a technology perspective, I would say that a lot of times they're thinking about more on the content creation side, the authoring experience and research versus bringing those tools to the end users and extending the experience using AI. So that kind of external facing is typically overlooked from my perspective.
Yeah, and I'll add on that I could have that conversation with prospects and clients and then just go look at their website. Are they even implementing a basic schema structure? I mean, that's really facilitating that AI bots crawl and extraction of content from your page. So that would be from my perspective, I think, the digital lens, if you will.
Yeah, and if you want to tie that back to the previous question about search, having structured data is actually really important for implementing semantic search as well, because you can wrap special tooling around that search implementation. So if you're searching for articles, you can bring back previews of those articles right into the semantic search experience instead of just getting a wall of text like you would do from a typical LLM. So we're able to build the more sophisticated your data structure is not just good for external facing search, but it's also great for users coming to your site for a semantic search experience. And then some other prerequisites for that would be, so Drupal 10 is a prerequisite for the Drupal AI modules, and then Search API, and also you'll need to implement essentially a vector database to store the embeddings in order to implement semantic search. So it's getting into some kind of technical details there, but.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Also, if you could only prioritize 3 things for a small team to work on to get their website AI ready, what would those 3 things be?
Yeah, it feels like every team we work with is a small team, or at least a small team in spirit. So we know that feeling. And I think the thing about small teams is you always feel like you're starting from behind and you're trying to do so many different things. So the key is kind of a little bit just building on previous things we said, is not to boil the ocean, to take it one step at a time. And three things that come to mind for me, John and Richard might have other thoughts, but a little bit like I said earlier, pick a few starting points, like addressing schema, or a few high priority pages. I'm the UX person, so I kind of gravitate toward the UX changes, and create a short roadmap, something that you can handle, something you can do, and pick away at it, keep working on it, and see what you can improve in the next 2 or 3 months. So that's the first one. Then the second one is just having some kind of basic measurement in place. If you may have sophisticated measurement in place, in which case you can maybe disregard this, but not just traffic, but thinking about engagement and conversion, and making sure that you're measuring that accurately, and looking at that measurement, using it to improve things. And then finally, just looking at whatever's getting in the way, whether it's CMS issues, technical debt, even other priorities at work that are getting in the way of what you need to be able to do, and start seeing what you can do to kind of disentangle that, and seeing if you can start to chip away at some of those longer term structural challenges. So a lot of times the biggest challenge isn't knowing what to do. There's often many things we can do. It's whether the system actually lets you make those changes that you want to make.
Gotcha. Thank you. So you all have discussed schema markup quite a bit and touched upon LLMs.txt a little. One question that comes in is, would really like to understand your position about LLMs.txt, and then also Markdown files and the recent Markdown solution that Cloudflare announced last week, I believe it is.
Not too familiar with that Cloudflare. Do you have any more other details on that Cloudflare?
It basically crawls the site and has the ability to produce instant Markdown files for your pages. And then the question, I believe, is how your position on LLMs.txt and LLMs being able to understand the site through an LLMs.txt file, and then if Markdown files also help with training on the LLM side.
Yeah, I mean, Markdown files definitely help. There's ways to generate those files quite easily with Drupal AI, I believe. Yeah, I think any tooling like the Cloudflare stuff, if you're hosting on there, there's probably integrations directly as well. So, Richard, have you used any of these Markdown tools?
No, I haven't. But the question about the LLM text file, I think it's prudent to have it. I was just reading an article a couple of weeks ago that talked about how maybe we're still quite early in the stage to definitively say if it's effective or not effective. My feeling is to use it if you've got the capabilities to use it. But I've seen a lot of these posts and content shares, people talking about these wins, these things that you can do to make yourself instantly AI visible. And I think we're still too early in the process to really know for sure. But that would be my answer there, I think.
Got you. Thank you. Let's see here. Well, first of all, how are you familiar with JavaScript rendering? Are you familiar with LLMs having difficulty with JavaScript rendering? And if so, how are you dealing with that, and any tips that you may have on your side?
Well, some of the tools that we're building out for our digital advisor, essentially we implement custom single directory components, which is a Drupal construct, and then we use a third-party agent framework. You could use LangGraph or Agno or Crew AI, and those essentially talk to Drupal through a JSON or JavaScript interface known as AGUI. so agentic user interface protocol, and that's part of a suite of protocols that align with MCP and A2A, which is the agent-to-agent protocol. And then so we get around any problems with JavaScript by using this AGUI module. So we actually authored the AGUI module for Drupal, and that basically transports data between the agentic framework, whether it's the one within Drupal or a third-party one like LangGraph, and then that triggers events through the AGUI interface, and then re-render the Drupal side UX, whether it's JavaScript or kind of plain, kind of twig rendered user interfaces using our custom components. So that module is readily available and open source if you want to check that out. It's called AGUI.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. How would you compare Drupal's AI readiness to some other CMS solutions out there, such as Sanity, Contentful, or Webflow?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that like some of those tools are user UX centric, so they're embedded into the authoring environment, and just essentially as you build the page, they're generating content directly into the content structure, which can get a little bit messy. Contentful is a headless platform, so I'm not really sure how they would use it. I guess they would just be used to generate structured content, so there would be not much help on the kind of the front end rendering instance of it, whereas Drupal kind of sits in the middle. We can help generate structured content as well as take like a Figma file and translate that into a template for you. So you sort of get the best of both worlds within one tool. You typically would have to combine that stuff or lose some of the structured content ability with the UX centric content management systems, and then you lose the front end piece with the headless CMSs. So I would think that Drupal kind of sits in the middle quite nicely there.
Thank you, John. Thank you. So before we sign off, John, Bjorn, Richard, again, thank you very much for today. Lots of information, and I really like how we broke it down between, I guess, the front-end marketing side, implementation, and then on the tech side, really heavy there. Where can everyone find you online, and is there a way to contact you all to get more information?
Yeah, I think there's a QR code on the screen that will help connect anyone that wants to have some questions answered and wants to reach out to us. hello@imagexmedia.com.
Yeah, we'll also have a booth at DrupalCon
Yes.
next week. So please, if you're there, come by and see us. Say hello.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And thanks a lot for today. And as a reminder, I'll go ahead and pin our handout, the AI Readiness Checklist for Marketers. For those of you who did not have a chance to download that, it should be on your screen right now. So again, thank you, John, Bjorn, and Richard, and the team at ImageX. Really appreciate everything today. And I hope you have a great DrupalCon next week.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Before we sign off, our next SEJ webinar is going to be Don't Go Chasing AI Yet, a framework for prioritizing SEO versus AI search. That will be Wednesday, March 25th, so next week, with a bonus webinar on Thursday, March 26th. Again, thanks again for the team at ImageX. Learned a lot today, and also learned a lot about Drupal's capabilities for handling all of this. Like, to see a CMS is ahead of the curve, especially on the markup side and everything else with AI friendliness. It's really cool to see. So thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
All right. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.